Montreal. If anybody has any questions.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I can't. I think I just saw you. You're talking.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
My sound was down. Hi. What was that?
I just think that we got a little bit of administrivia to talk to today, basically about meeting cadence. If we want to keep the virtuals going on a monthly basis, it's totally fine with me. I block this time off for like the next year, and probably do a little recap of what happened at the IETF meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I think what is there anything I can do to help kind of move things
Nope. I
along?
think Maggie's doing a great job plugging along. I think the next thing is like, okay, Ecker, if you think that we're going to document what's out there, you got to write a document. So I'll try to get him to actually write down what's actually being done.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So, hi, Eva. Thanks for showing up early. I appreciate it. We're probably not going to start till about 5 minutes after.
No worries. I'm gonna
Okay.
go make
Thanks.
some coffee.
Yep. That reminds me. Where's mine?
I know.
It's in my Vey Bay cup from Australia.
Oh, nice. Victoria.
Iced coffee, so you need a big mug to put it all in there.
A nice big mug. No, I have a really crappy iced coffee.
We want an espresso machine from our vet, and it has like this iced coffee little pot or whatever. So you just put some ice in there, and I don't know if it's any different than just brewing regular coffee and pouring it over ice, but whatever.
That's cool. You want it.
Yeah.
That's
the one thing that the dog, other than companionship, brought. All the other vet bills were staggering. You know, the dog can have ACL, MCL surgery.
Oh man, it's so expensive.
Very exciting.
No, God, I know we're big dog lovers, and the vet bills can be.
Yep. Yeah, and Drew, thanks for showing up early. We'll probably start a couple minutes from now after some other people show up. I think I'm not sure if Maggie's done teaching, but she might be running from class.
I think I need a coffee IV today. Not enough.
Make sure I set my alarm for my next call so I don't get completely distracted and forget. There we go. Okay. Turn this off. Don't need to be bothered for the next hour. Dun, dun, dun. Hey, Maggie. We were going to start about 5 minutes after, so if you need to grab some coffee or something, feel free.
Thank you for putting these slides together, Maggie.
Yes.
So great.
Okay, it's still dead.
No problem.
Okay. What do we got? What do we got? We got it. Oh, right. Cool. Got a couple people. All right. I think we're going to get started. It's 5 minutes after. I feel like this is the much longer people are going to leave. So, hi, it's Adult Virtual Interim. I'm Sean Turner. Erica is here with us as well. For the chairs, this is an official meeting of the IETF. The whole 9 yards. The session will be recorded or is being recorded. So, all that chat we had earlier about dogs and coffee, it's all going to be on YouTube.
It's all in there.
This is the new note. Well, if you were at the meeting in Montreal, you'll note this. This is policies, procedures. Basically, read it. You can scan the QR code, read all the stuff. If you have any questions, you can ask myself or Erica. If we don't know the answer, we can find somebody who does. I'll linger here for a minute, basically, so you can get a chance. All right, cool. And there we go. All right, meeting tips again. If you're not talking, it's probably best to mute. You can. There's so few of us here. You can turn your video on if you want. For everybody, it's probably all going to work. But again, it's being recorded, so mind your P's and Q's. Alrighty. So agenda. I think we're just going to kind of do the typical. Go through. I think we basically just want to do a summary of what happened at the IETF meeting. Talk a little bit about meeting logistics, and then kind of jump into the threat model. And again, I appreciate Maggie for making some slides. Anybody want to talk about anything else? All right, Erica, can I impose upon you to take some quick minutes? Appreciate it. All right, cool. So I guess the first thing is that at the IETF meeting, we had a little bit of course correction, I guess I'd say. So I think what we're doing here is we're trying to finalize the threat model. And then, so again, thanks for all the hard work. And then we're going to try to document what's actually done now in the networks, and like define my network, which is the one that's kind of out there, and then kind of publish that as a I don't know, I guess kind of as like, here's what it is. And then the threat model could be something that we can use later, basically, to figure out if there's other efforts to actually come through and actually work on developing a newer, better, greater protocol. I don't know, does anybody have any questions with that? Because I mean, I think that essentially means that like Eric Riscola, who, this is his grand idea, and it seemed like there was support for that at the meeting, that he's going to have to write the finding document, is going to need to really kind of kick off and be less kind of forward thinking. So I can definitely ride herd on him to get that done. As much as I can ask him and then get him to do it when he's got some cycles. And I guess Brent and Sadika will be revising their document as well to make sure that it documents exactly what's going on. So I guess that's kind of the 10,000 foot summary. Does anybody have any questions? I think most of you were there. So, okay. Great. Let me slide over here to Maggie. Do you want to drive the slides, or do you want me to drive them for you?
I can do it.
All right. Hopefully you can do it, because I'm going to give you pass slide control. Yes. I don't actually figure out where the buttons are.
Oops.
All right, cool. Did it work?
Not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Yes, I want to pass slide control. A new deck is being shared.
Okay.
There we go. All right, cool.
Okay, so as Sean kind of said, at last IETF meeting, we talked about some open issues with the threat model, but also kind of what our long-term goals are in wrapping this up. So as part of that, I have created 2 pull requests that someone else from the threat model document will review, either Jesse or Shailesh, just so we get an extra set of eyes on it. Although if anyone here has opinions, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in them. So the first one is issues from Watson Lad that were sent over email. It's mostly pretty minor formatting changes, things like capitalization, where definitions are living, adding definitions for things. So I don't think that will be particularly controversial. And then the other one, which I think might influence our future decisions, is one around updating the attack threat matrix. So I'll go into more detail about that. And then there are three issues that do not currently have PRs. So two of them, 160 and 163, we're going to talk about in more detail today. And then another one, 162, basically I'll include the text of that in the slides, but I basically went back and forth a little bit with the person who submitted that. And then also Bob Hinton also commented on that on GitHub. And I have a proposal about how we can handle that issue. So that's the high level. I'll go into a little bit more detail on some of these now. So pull request 165 is related to a comment Watson made, which is that there's a distinction between technically sophisticated attacks that could be packaged up and run by anyone after the software is distributed, and ones that require skillful physical manipulation. So what I did was I went back and looked at all of the different types of attacks and tried to see if our likelihood accounted for this particular scenario. And so there were two different attacks that I thought needed to be updated based on this feedback. So one of them was about accessory firmware modifications. So in the current document, it says that the likelihood of that is low, basically because the likelihood of someone being able to do that successfully the first time, I think, is relatively low. However, if someone were able to successfully do that, then I think the likelihood would increase to medium. So if there was a widely deployed attack, it could increase to medium. However, in the PR, I talk a little bit about how it will depend on how effectively people can patch accessories. So if there's some sort of vulnerability, but then the vulnerability is able to be patched like throughout the network promptly, then the impact will be relatively low. So it just depends. But overall, I think that kind of elevates how important I think considering this is. So originally I had it the risk level as a medium, and then based on that, I thought that the risk level might be closer to high than to medium. So I updated it to high. But on the other hand, there were things like impersonation attacks between like a device and a network, for example, where I thought that if a readily available attack was available, it might increase the likelihood, but that in this particular case, the number of mitigations available are actually very high, such that I don't actually think it affects the risk level. So if people have opinions about that, I think I would encourage them to comment on the PR before I merge it. There's basically some minor text additions and then also updating the threat matrix accordingly. And the reason I think the risk matters is because it's going to affect how we prioritize our time in the technical implementation, whether or not I think we should focus on things that are high risk, obviously. Okay. And so this is just the text from 162, just for people's convenience, about a potential new threat, the swarm attack. I actually think that this is potentially useful as a scenario rather than as an attack, because it involves components of a bunch of different attacks that are actually already in the document. So I asked the author to consider adding this as a scenario rather than as an attack. Okay.
I do have to say that
Okay.
I appreciate the way it was at least written up and sent in that way, right?
Yeah.
So I think it made it a lot easier to digest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, and so 160 and 163 are kind of about thinking about how to operationalize this document and make it useful for the people who are writing the next set of documents. So 160 is based on feedback from Watson, which was suggesting that rather than the current order of section 3, where we have scenarios about how unwanted location tracking could occur first, followed by attacks, and within the attacks, there's also mitigation in there, to rearrange it as I show on the left here, where basically you talk about the attacks on the protocol first, then you talk about example scenarios, and then you have a separate section that talks about mitigation, and then later you have the design section, which would not change. And so I think I'm open to these changes. I think ultimately, but it gave me, reason I haven't done it yet is because I just want to make sure that whatever structural changes we're making to the document, they're actually useful to the people who are writing the new documents. So I want to hear from people about how helpful this would be, because we don't really need to mess around with the document if everyone already knows what they need to do. So, and I also would say that one of the things that these two issues don't not necessarily get at is like, how do we address the priorities for what we should be working on moving forward? And that's what I want to talk a little bit about now. So based on the updated threat matrix, so if we use my new proposed matrix from the which updates one of the priorities of the attacks to high, for a risk level from one of the attacks from medium to high, then there's 5 different attacks that are highest risk. One is deploying multiple tags. Another one is accessory firmware modifications. A third one is tracking a target using their own tag. Fourth one is impersonation attack. And there's two different types of impersonation attacks that are relevant, whether deploying a tag that's impersonating a known tag, or a device sending a command to a tag. Basically, that device is a non-conformant device. And the fifth one is deploying a GPS tracker. And I think what's interesting about this is that I think the scope of these attacks varies a lot. There's going to be different documents that they're all relevant to, but there's something that's relevant to every document. Okay. And then in terms of features, I think this is getting at the like, what are the differences between what we currently have deployed, like, for example, in the Find My network or in Google's or Samsung's network or Tile, is the types of features that need to be implemented and that need to be implemented in like a standardized and uniform way. So the draft document that Apple and Google wrote talks about a subset of these things. So the first one is active scanning. So active scanning is when you basically press a button, look for tags near you. So that's supported on certain protocol platforms for certain types of tags. So we would want to make sure that there's a standardized way for that to work across the entire DULT protocol. And as far as I know, I don't think that's been written up anywhere. Parts of passive scanning have been written up. So we say that there should be unwanted tracking alerts, but the finding algorithm, as far as I know, has not been written up anywhere. And then there's also things about like notification management, which we might decide is out of scope and something that only platforms have to care about. But I think unwanted tracking alerts and finding algorithms are definitely solidly in scope. And then remote disablement, which is a big thing we've talked about. One of the things we kind of decided at the last IETF was that we just don't have enough confidence that we can implement this from like a device to tag level. So that one idea was to look at it more from the crowdsourced network level, which is something that I don't think has been done yet. And the last thing was a feature that I suggested that we incorporate, which is having network activities logs for the crowdsourced network as a way to basically audit things and figure out when accounts are being accessed in a way to facilitate unwanted location tracking. Okay. So these are some ideas that I have about how we could move forward. So I think the first thing is we need to get consensus on like what the focus areas for the rest of our working group should be. So consensus in the focus areas, and then figuring out, well, what are the focus areas, and then which documents are relevant. Presumably there'll be multiple documents that all these focus areas are relevant to, and then who's going to work on them and when they're going to do it. And then we could record those focus areas at the end of the threat model document. So last time we'd also talked about doing like a much more detailed discussion of like the current landscape of things. I'm not sure if that's worth everyone's time to spend a lot of time on that versus just doing something like this where we talk about these are the kind of focus areas and then just get right into it. But if there's like existing material that's written up about how the Find My network works, I think we could also include citations that would be useful. And then in terms of the threat model itself, I don't think there's a ton more for us to do besides facilitating the discussion about the focus areas. I'm going to get as much feedback on the PRs before we incorporate them, and then address the other like minor outstanding issues. Yeah. Oh, and this is just a picture of the threat model in case anyone wants it. So it's in the notes. But yeah, so I can stop there.
All right, we're throwing it open. All right, does everybody not have their coffee yet? All right, Sadika, thanks.
I can go ahead. I know we had an algorithm document. I don't know what's the latest on that, and I think it's a bit related to what Maggie brought up around the algorithm plus active scanning, right? So I guess question to Maggie, how do you envision these to exist along with the algorithm document also? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think some of the stuff that I should eventually be in the finding algorithm document might be in the accessory protocol document. There's certain requirements, but that are not necessarily elucidated. But so I think I agree with you that a lot of that should ultimately be in the finding algorithm document. So when you actively scan, how do you decide if something's a tag that's a risk? And the same thing with the passive. How do you decide whether or not you're going to give an unwanted tracking alert? And also things like, are there going to be customizations like in AirGuard, you can customize like the sensitivity of your system or that kind of thing. So I think all that should be in the finding document, but I don't think that's been started as far as I know.
Yeah, so there is a finding document, but I don't know that it has any of that in there.
I think not even the finding one. There was an algorithm one also.
Oh, so there was an algorithm document that we started out looking at that was, I think, based on Matt Green's paper and some others, and we had the person's name is now completely escaping me that came and talked about it. So yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how those are all gonna interact. Gosh, I can't remember that person's name. That's bad.
And I guess
Gabrielle Beck.
It's good memory right there. Yes.
what if, I guess, that document never happens? Then do we have a backup strategy, I guess? So the accessory protocol is meant for mainly tag manufacturers. So it's not exactly that. Not exactly fitting into the thread doc also. So I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back and look at some of the focus areas, I think which ones, looking at this, which ones do you think are most relevant to the accessory protocol? I think the impersonation attack is most relevant to the accessory protocol in terms of the attacks.
That's sort of relevant.
And maybe accessory firmware modifications also, because the accessory will have to verify the firmware.
Yeah, I agree.
And in terms of the features, we think active scanning, passive scanning should probably be in the finding document. Remote disablement, we were originally talking about it because Sadika had brought it up in context of the accessory protocol, and that's because we thought we were trying to do a way for the device to send a message to the tag to disable, but we couldn't find a good way to do that. So that might become a crowdsourced network thing, although there might eventually be some sort of opcode that accessory protocol has to support, but I don't think the majority of the work will be in there. So I think it's mostly those two attacks that are the most relevant.
Yeah, the remote disablement for sure it's a fit, but we are sort of blocked on that. And the other ones, active and passive scanning, definitely I think not fitting into the accessory protocol.
Anybody else? Yep. Okay. So I think I'm not quite sure how to proceed. I mean, because what we could do is just note literally that these are attacks and that there are not things actively worked and pin it, right? I don't know.
I think we need, oh, sorry, go ahead, Deb.
So I'm walking into this late. A, I was late to the meeting. B, I don't actually know what we're talking about. But if this is the threat document, is it? It's possible to have threats that you don't counter. Like you just want to list them without necessarily countering them, to have a list of all of the things that can be a problem, right? I don't think it's necessary to have answers for everything. Is that kind of where we are? Am I guessing wrong? I mean, I may very well be guessing incorrectly.
I think one thing that would be really helpful, and this is maybe not even something I hadn't necessarily proposed before, but if there's not a ton of appetite to keep working on this, I think we really need to know if what we might codify as good enough is actually good enough, right? So we haven't actually done any assessment like from or like consulted people who are experts in gender-based violence about whether or not these proposals are going to improve the state of the art, right? So for example, like I've been saying for 3 years that we need to have consistent active scanning across platforms. So if we deploy something that doesn't have that feature, then I don't feel like we're done. So I think there needs to be some agreement about what done might mean, because I do not think we're done personally.
Jesse? Oops, she popped out. All right, Eva, you popped to the top. Oh, no, Jesse? Oh, you're on mute. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay,
All right, there you go.
I agree that we are not that we're not done. I mean, I do also think that it is useful to note that, you know, Erica and myself are experts in gender-based violence, but also given our involvement, and particularly mine in writing this document, it you know, it could always use fresh eyes looking at it, even amongst experts. I mean, the thing that I will also note is that there will have to be a certain amount of, I guess, translation might be the right word, in order to get useful commentary from a lot of other experts in gender-based violence, just because even in the threat modeling document, which in some ways is one of the less high-tech documents in this working group, like it does get pretty technical, relatively speaking. But I think too that part of the point of the scenarios section has always been to try to translate some of these attacks into what this could look like on the ground. As far as trying to solve all the attacks, I mean, it's true, we may not be able to address every possible attack, but I do think that, well, not necessarily trying to list every possible attack, but trying to get as many mitigated the best that we can as possible. Like it is useful, because if we're just specifying what the attacks are, that doesn't really have any teeth to it, I guess, in terms of getting the industry to shift how it thinks about these issues and how it thinks about threat modeling, which I think is also part of the purpose of this exercise, since I think industry is used to thinking about like protecting enterprises or assets rather than protecting people. and this is a good opportunity to basically switch that around. I can't at the moment think of a better phrase for that.
Change the paradigm would be somebody's MBA speak. Sorry, I couldn't resist myself. Eva, go ahead.
All right. Well, the first issue I was going to address has already been addressed in chat, since Maggie was talking about outside consultations. But hello, I too am an expert in gender-based violence, and I would be, happy to try to translate this document into something that might be more readable by non-technical people. But I'm not sure that this should be the direction that we should go in. I actually wanted to back up Jessie on her point, which is that what we want to do is change the way that the manufacturers create these networks and create these devices. And I think that that should be our laser focus. Because right now what they are doing is not good enough, and the longer that it takes for us to tell them what they should be doing, the more justified they feel in just sort of blowing us off. So I think that that's the thing that we should really move forward on. And I think that the thing that would most likely get us there is not so much enumerating the way in which the existing networks work, because the people we're addressing already know the way in which the existing networks work, but to highlight the ways in which the existing networks fail, and we would like them to behave like this instead of like that. So just really highlighting the differences and the changes that we think that they should make. This should be a normative document.
Deb, were you in line and then got out?
Yeah, I put my hand back down. I do think you have to be careful not to let perfect be enemy of the good, right? So if you've been working on this draft for this amount of time, then there comes a point where you've got to like cut it and issue it, right? So a lot of times you won't get action based on a draft, but you'll get action based on an RFC. So don't let, like I said, don't let perfect be enemy of the good. That's it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think that's why I did not really want to spend a lot of time writing about how the network works and all that other stuff. But I think Eva's point is a good one, which is that we could potentially try to spend a little bit of time making it really clear about like how the networks currently fail. And that was sort of my goal with like slide 6 and slide 7, which are, these are attacks that that the current protocols are vulnerable to, or there are features that would be helpful that are not currently implemented. And I think maybe all of them can't be implemented, but I don't think that we've actually really tried to implement any of these. I think the bigger issue now is that we've put a lot of work into this threat model document, and we need to put some work into the technical stuff, because most of the technical stuff we have currently in here is from the accessory protocol document that there's already an internet draft of that. So there actually hasn't been like a real technical heavy lift happening in the working group yet. And we originally were going to kind of do that in parallel with the threat model, but that didn't happen. So I think I would appreciate thoughts on how we can kind of get momentum. And it sounds like from Deb that maybe the answer is we need to put a pin in, or put a bow around this to actually get that momentum started again. And so I'm very motivated and happy to do that. But I was hoping we wouldn't have to put a lot more into this to do that.
Yeah, so that's my my question to you is like, how do you think, I mean, because more work is you like moving sections around. How do you think we can figure out whether or not that is going to be useful effort before we go off and start the other thing? So like actually go start to do the technical bits, because I think the technical bits is, you know, asking the authors to start spinning things up, right, and getting things done as opposed to waiting for us to get done. And that can be done like now, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping like these are our priorities, these 5 things and these 4 things, like
So
figure out which one's
so,
relevant to your document and then do them.
so yeah, so I feel like unless there's anybody saying like, no, this is the wrong set, or I think that these other ones ought to be included, we should act like this is what we want and go for it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay. So like what I can do is I can take the issues that we already have and I can add these at the end, and then maybe I can ping Jesse and Eva and Erica and anyone who wants to help me come up with like a pretty short, like I think maybe like 2 or 3 paragraphs, just like this is how things are failing and this is why this is important. But I just don't even, I feel like we all know that. I don't know that we have to spend a lot of time on that. But yeah, I think I want to try to really wrap this up soon. And I don't no one, there's not enough people here to object to it, I guess, but I can also send an email to the list to try to see if people have concerns with this direction. So
Well, this is a meeting if they weren't here. So I mean, this gets back to, I feel like, if we're the experts, we get to say what we think it is, and then a lot of times people will not object till later. And so I think we have to proceed, as opposed to waiting, trying to get acceptance beforehand, just proceed forward like, okay, this is what we're going to do, tell me I'm wrong, and if you want to do something else, great, you're going to do that because we're going to do this over here. So we can get it done in the way you think it makes sense, because you'll be driving it, or you and that's the royal you. Yeah, and as Deb said, right, at some point, like, we're gonna do this threat document, and things are gonna pop up later. We have to make some tweaks. We shouldn't try to figure out, like, trying to get it perfect before we proceed on. We should just kind of start marching out. So I'm gonna take an action to try to ping Eric on this finding document to see if there's some time frame maybe we can get going for maybe the next revision. We may need to find another co-author, because I think Christine is kind of redirected to do other things, and her free time kind of got gobbled up. So, Sarika?
One other quick comment. So basically, in the threat document, we have scenarios, right? Maybe it is more clear in people's heads if we could, for example, link it to the methods we listed here. For example, for such and such scenario, if the victim had this technology in hand, it could help them. Just to kind of bridge the gap between we are claiming something is missing, right? And there is a scenario that that technology could actually help. I don't know if we already have that in the threat doc, but maybe something like that could help to kind of link the technology that is missing, that you think, to the existing threat vectors. I don't know if it was clear.
I'll just say Erica said in the chat that a couple of us can work together to try to put up a short and sweet how it's failing. So I can basically, after this meeting, I can make an issue for that, just so we can track it, because it doesn't exist if it's not in the GitHub issues for me. I'm trying to
For
keep
me, it's
everything
just
in
like that.
there.
It's not on my calendar. It doesn't happen. Right?
But yeah, I mean, and then also Michael Richardson said in the chat that he can review it before January. So I think that's great. That's great too. I'm kind of leaning towards maybe not doing Watson's huge refactor just because I'm not sure it's worth our time to do that. But I think we can also just keep going without it. And if we feel like we need it, we can always go back to it.
I tend to agree. That seems like a huge editorial exercise. And while I agree it might help, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's worth what is the saying, the juice is worth the squeeze. If more people are like, yeah, we better to do that, I can see that. But I mean, I'm at this point, it seems like a lot of work for a comment. Okay. So we got some things that people have agreed to do and some stuff we're not going to do. We're going to move forward. So I'm going to ping Ecker. Maggie's going to try to pull together some text to explain what doesn't work and why people should care with a group of people. Michael said he's going to do some review before January, which is great because that's in the next 4 weeks. We appreciate that, and we'll go from there. Was there anything that I missed? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.